In this video, I'll be talking about the video game genres, and before I get into anything, I'll have like a mini introduction and talk about universal designs and commonly used terms throughout the video and future videos of video game genres. The simulation genre has been eliminated because in theory, all genres would fall under this genre, being counterproductive. What does this mean exactly? Well, no matter how realistic a game is to the real world, it will be simulating a universe as close as possible whether it's realistic or not. I will not be using tautologies in the descriptions for a true definition for the best understanding possible. Given here are spread onto at least 2 tiers for simplicity, presenting 9 distinguishable game mechanic genres, and their basic second tier inheritance subgenres with sometimes more nested subgenres. All video games are categorized by the basic game mechanics implemented in the game, and by joining 2 or more genres into one can cause complications. In determining which genre a game will fall into, I look at the most dominant element, calling it the primary game mechanics, and the supporting elements called the secondary game mechanics. Now I'll get into the universal designs and commonly used terms. There tends to be 5 different types of sprites: AI, aggressives, chaotics, defensives, and passives. AIs, these are the avatars that try to mimic human behavior. Aggressives, these are the avatars that prevent the player progression. Chaotics, these are the avatars that will attack any player and any avatar in game. Defensives, block off certain sections of the game. And passives are the avatars that provide information, usually for hints and sometimes for story arcs. And with that stated, these sprites can change their primary objective, so it's always ideal to be careful. And now I'll demonstrate these different types of sprites in the game GTA 5. So I'm playing GTA 5 right now. Basically anyone you see is a passive, but any of the passives can change into like an aggressive. Like that person right there, he just ran me over. Well, it's more to get away, to tell you the truth, but there are some people that will fight you. And a natural aggressive would be a police officer. That's below me right now. So the police officers are a natural aggressor. They only track down you. I don't think there's any chaotics in GTA. You might, if I think they are, if there are chaotics, there probably is random crimes happening. So everyone here is a passive, but they can easily change into something else and aggressive. So there's no chaotics. I don't think there's defensives in this game, but I remember in the previous GTA, if you went to an island where you weren't supposed to be because of the story arc didn't take you there yet, there'll be police officers defending that area. Like, you get like a star rating of 3 or something, and they'll be chasing you until you're dead. And if you're on that island, they won't stop until you're dead unless you leave the island and get rid of the wanted level. So the wanted level will be at 3. So yeah, this is pretty much it. There's nothing much to talk about. but GTA is a perfect game to emphasize this because it's alive. It's a world that's alive. So here, this is a passive, but doesn't give you information. But then, if you play the main story, you might have side missions, and then you might help out a passive and gives you information on how. Might give you information on to do something, and then once you do that, you get more of something of the story arc, or maybe you learn something about the character. So yeah, this is pretty much it. Algorithm, in the simple sense, is a way of handling a situation by performing tasks in a certain order to produce replicable, desirable results. Avatar is the control character, object, or element in the game to allow the player to progress through the game. Challenge, in the context of a video game or test of one's abilities or resources in a demanding undertaking. In the context of this video, I will be explaining what each subgenre's main challenges will be and some of the different forms they can come in. Complex practical puzzles, problems in the game that halts progression of the player until solved within the environment. Simple practical puzzles, problems in the game that can possibly halt progression of the player if not solved within the environment. Game mechanics. This is referring to the set of rules that are programmed into a game for the player to be forced to follow with an input device that allows actions to be performed on screen. This can be broken down to 3 attributes: basic tests to meet objectives, parameters focusing on specific means to successfully pass the test, and architecture being symmetrical as possible. Genre, a category that is defined by a criterion that remains consistent to point out common attributes of video games to group them together. Indirect control, this generally entails that the player will give the controlled avatar instructions to perform instead of controlling the avatar to perform those instructions. Direct control, this is talking about having buttons, actions, or instructions mapped to an avatar on screen for player progression. Linear level design, this generally means that the level design of a video game has one path to take to beat the game and or one path to get to a certain destination. Non-linear or open world design, or branching path to the same objective or destination for player progression. Recreational or sandbox world design is a non-linear interactive universe, has avatars like passive, aggressives, chaotics, and defensives, and has side activities directly or indirectly helping or not helping player progression. Minigames is a game within a game with a short or simple objective. Sprites, a living residual graphic in the game with various purposes to add complexity, detail, or anything related to the universe created. Inheritance, in the context of this video, is the subgenres taking the top tier attributes and introducing new attributes in a lower tier, aka subgenre. Persistent online, this is referring to video games that have an online portion to connect to servers to join a world that keeps running when the player signs out. Styles. Style refers to the cinematics and or graphics relating to the visual representation of video game worlds, as with cinematography is relating to the creation of motion pictures. Some of the different styles, if not all, are animation, live action, and silent. Under animation is stop motion, cell animation, and computer animation. Under cell animation is rotoscope and traditional. Under computer animation is 2D and 3D. Lastly, video game is an algorithm-filled environment to handle all possible actions of an end user, human player, to control the end user to a point that the algorithms do not break when handled with a combination of actions from the end user. The algorithms also create barriers as well, provide the user with tests to pass, and can grant various rewards to passing specific tests, and having a tendency to require the user to work towards a long-term objective. The last thing that these algorithms can create are sprites, a living residual graphic in the virtual world or environment that can associate or disassociate in the following categories as potential threats to all participants, despite their primary functions are aggressive, defensive, passive, chaotic, and AI. So part of the purpose of stating these definitions is, for one, I will be using these terms frequently, and two, to remind people of the different elements of a video game. Now I'll be talking about the action genre, and this is the top tier for the action genre, so meaning that the subgenres of the action genre will contain these attributes, and the subgenres will introduce a new attribute. So the attributes that all action games contain is simple practical puzzles, and the end user's skill set is reflected through the avatar. This is talking about the primary processes and the secondary processes. What makes this genre distinct from all the other genres is that the focus of these games is that the player's skill set is what solely gets them through the game and ultimately reaching the primary objective. Some of the challenges is navigation and finding weaknesses or patterns of enemies. Some of the balancing issues are indicators eliminating navigational challenges, enemies giving away their weaknesses or clearly indicated by the visuals, memorization over skills, increased health or damage for the enemies, overpowering enemies, invincible algorithms, no penalties or retaliation for not playing an online game the way it's meant to be played. Example like quitting before the match ends or team killing. The first subgenre is combat, and the new attributes is conflict situations and depriving life or function from any manner, animate or animate, usually from achieving an undesirable outcome. Examples: Bioshock Infinite, Mass Effect, Fallout 3, or Skyrim. First off, Mass Effect is an action game because the player's skills is what gets the player through the game, and this just means that I control the avatar's full movement. Another reason is the RPG elements in the game only reflect the player's skills, and they are just the elements or supporting the primary functions of the player's avatar. I'll eventually get into the RPG genre down the road, but this video is focusing on the action genre, and I'm only stating why it belongs here and not in the RPG genre or category. On a side note, after coming back to Mass Effect 1 from putting it down many months ago, because of a lot of the poor design choices and poor programming, it reminds me of why I wanted to get into the video game reviews in the first place. The core mechanics of this game is not well executed, but I think many of the game critics love the story so much that they overlook many of these aspects. I've noticed there's a lot of Western or North American action games that are classified as an RPG because they contain RPG elements and not the mechanics. Before moving on, every game will have some kind of combat in it, and it's about the execution of the combat that will determine whether it's borrowing from this subgenre or not. This is an action game at its purest form, so many games will take on elements from this action subgenre to add some kind of action in their games.
Give me a hand!
It's been pretty hairy down here, Phoenix. We lost a lot of men. We still got 2 Ravens unable to lift off.
It's okay. We'll take care of it.
The next subgenre is platform, and the new attributes is temporary air suspension techniques, or free running, using the environment to go beyond the limitations of typical movement. Examples: Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, Infamous 1-3, Devil May Cry 2013 Reboot. Why is Infamous and Call of Duty Advanced Warfare here? The main reason is because of the character's secondary processes or temporary air suspension techniques. Some of the Mario games won't be classified here because of the jumping on enemies or platforms isn't a game mechanic, it's an action. Plus, in some of the Mario games, the platform mechanics are obtained through power-ups than true character movement. Think of jumping on enemies, jumping on enemy heads, the equivalent of shooting an enemy. It's the method used to be less violent instead of allowing the character to punch someone and have no blood. Just a minor disclaimer, I haven't fully played Devil May Cry Reboot, but what I have played so far would classify this game as an action platformer. As with Sunset Overdrive, it's taking the subgenre and turning it on its head by allowing the type of free-running, comical movement seen in the gameplay. Yes, there is combat in the game like in the other subgenre, combat, but it's the execution of the combat in this subgenre that classifies this game in a different subgenre. With that stated, if the execution were to be the same as seen in the subgenre combat, having a free-running, sports-like movement is what ultimately makes these games platformers.
Hey, did you see any red barrels?
I've played my fair share of games. I know what to do with red barrels.
Audio surveillance X04. Leading with an agent on the right.
Are you there, John? Now that you've infiltrated the First Sons in Empire City, it's time I introduce you to my kind.
Floyd, these guys with big juicy heads are coming at me.
This next subgenre has two more nested subgenres, and this subgenre would be sport. Attributes: real world, physical and mental exertion component for a competition, rules preventing permanent injuries of spectators and participants, rules to control cheating, rules to focus on skill set, can be a career if considered professional internationally, and orthodox and unorthodox. The first subgenre under sport is form. Attributes: pushing for the best appearance, how perfect or graceful an action was performed, and pushing for the best successful action, the action that was completed. And examples for this would be iToy Connect, Wii Fit, Your Shape Fitness Evolve 2012. I don't have any gameplay for these games, and I don't want to use anyone else's gameplay for this portion of the video, and is the main reason why you're seeing just box art. This is a perfect example of a game that was unique enough at its time that it wasn't popular due to how different it was. As the years went by, people were more into the motion fitness video games. I'm talking about my letter grading in my video game review criteria overview video. Can you guess which motion fitness game came out first? The second subgenre under sport would be measurement, and the attributes is pushing for the best successful actions. Examples would be Gran Turismo, Super Smash Bros. Wii U. Why Smash a sports title and not Battle Royale? Many people will draw comparisons to Super Smash Bros. And PlayStation Battle Royale All-Star for good reason, because the gameplay is similar and aren't the same when it comes to the execution of the gameplay. As stated earlier, I only want to state why games don't belong here or belong to the action genre, and will later have a video explaining why the other games belong somewhere else. In short, Super Smash Bros. Wii U is a sports title because it puts everything into account what the player does. In other words, a knockout is a knockout. No aids making less of a skill-based game. Besides Smash, I think everything else is straightforward to why it's here. Lastly, about Battle Royale, because of the way it's designed, I can see many people thinking it's one way when it's the other in terms of gameplay, and will be misclassified because of it. Battle Royale is a party game, and Smash is an action game. This next subgenre is independent from the sports genre, but still falling under the action genre. It will be survival, and the attributes: restricted resources, restricted abilities, living, modern wilderness survival long-term living, bushcraft hybrid living, primitive long-term living, anti-predator adaptation techniques, avoiding objectionable interactions, resembling role-playing mechanics, food chain metaphor, aggression techniques, mobbing behavior techniques, and maladaptive techniques. Examples would be Splinter Cell Conviction, Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, and Left 4 Dead. Typically, games that are survival are horror games, but keep in mind that these genres are by game mechanics, not by story design. This kind of bleeds into the film genres, but descriptions like sci-fi or fantasy are realities, and descriptions like comedy or drama are story designs. Since video games can have stories, it's natural to say a video game is a survival horror game. But since this isn't cross-referencing other types of genres, titles like horror or fantasy are left out, and are focusing more on the gameplay classifications for less confusion. Many of the survival games make the player a prey when it comes to one-on-one in terms of action survival games, and will design or force the player of using many other options to overcome situations. Left 4 Dead is a good example because the player can get a boatload of ammunition, but if they try to do things alone, they won't make it far. This is the major difference between combat and survival. Master Chief has allies, but can take on the Flood, Covenant, Forerunners, and any other enemies, as opposed to the characters in Left 4 Dead. Besides Left 4 Dead single player being broken by design since it replicates the online with AI instead of redesigning levels for a solo player experience like Halo. A practice I find makes the game mode worthless due to a copy and paste game mode design. Some games that allow different approaches like Metal Gear Solid, instead of having a game over when caught, the player can choose to fight off the unlimited amount of enemies spawning or keep it stealthy to agree to make it easier in one way but difficult in others.
Rose knew that Rusty was in love with her, and she liked him too. She liked him a lot. He taught her to dance, and life had certainly taught her the value of a man who was gentle. He treated her well, made her smile, made her feel good. But Rusty wasn't the prince of her dreams, and that tended to underline the unbearable truth. She was no closer to that Hollywood magic than he was. The air in the visitor center was heavy with an awful smell, as if some rotten drowned thing had crawled up from its grave. Rusty kept coughing blood. My eyes were drawn to the twisted shape of his broken leg. The attack had been vicious. Max whined in his cage. Rusty's eyes were wild with fear and terror. He gasped. "Mr. Wake, it happened just the way it was on that page." I was too late. Someone had destroyed the circuit breaker. There was no way to get the lights back on.
Rusty!
Like the sports subgenre, this next subgenre has two more nested subgenres, and this next subgenre is performance art. Attributes: visual expression of human skill or imagination, and dramatic rendering. The first subgenre on the performance art is dance, with attributes of form of structure with the movement of the body. Examples would be Dance Central. I don't usually buy these types of games, and again, I don't choose to use other people's gameplay footage for my videos. The main reason why I named the subgenre performance art is because it's more descriptive than what it was before. The next subgenre on the performance art is music. And the attributes with music is the science of using vocals or instruments to produce desired sounds. Examples: Guitar Hero. Again, I have no gameplay, but this subgenre remained relatively the same and have pretty much been unchanged, so pretty straightforward and won't go into any more depth with this subgenre. The attributes here sound more like definitions because essentially they are, because the subgenre's titles are pretty much the description, but I didn't want to entail a certain method when producing sound, just the means. This also pertains to the dance subgenre too. Vehicle mechanism. Attributes. Control various types of inanimate or animate means of transport, either by aviation or surface or land. Examples: Ace Combat Assault Horizon, Driver San Francisco, and World of Tanks. Why no simulation? This is what I was partly talking about with no sims in my genres, because with this particular case, most if not all simulations have no real goal, thus not making it a real game, and more of a learning tool. If a game is a simulation and it fits the criteria of being a video game, it will be possible to classify a simulation with my current genre structure. Out of all the other genres, I would say this is the slowest growing genre because it borrows from other genres or subgenres, and it can essentially be changing the game so much, making it another type of game if not done correctly. That will be it for action genres. TX3 signing out.
I don't believe this.
40 Adam 30 heading east on Fremont in pursuit of Jericho, requesting backup now.
I should have listened to you. Damn, I was an asshole.
We can argue about who is the bigger asshole after we catch that bastard.
Hey, shrug it off, John. Keep him inside, Tanner.
Yeah, that was the plan.
Hey, he went down that alley.
I see it.
Where'd he go? Whoa, he's behind us! Come on, man, drive, drive! Control, this is 40 Adam 30. We need backup now.
Hold on.
Ah! Damn it!
You son of a bitch!
Season V